remember the show The Girls Next Door and the serious relationship Hugh Hefner had with Holly Madison until their public breakup, of course.
She went from girl next door to Playboy centerfold.
Holly, Kendra, and Bridget get wilder, party harder, and go way nakeder. The hottest show of the year. The Girls Next Door, Season 5. Holly, Bridget, and Kendra bid farewell.
Holly wanted very much to get married and have children, and that wasn't in the cards for us.
Holly Madison just released her new book, Down the Rabbit Hole, Curious Adventures and Cautionary Tales of a Former Playboy Bunny. It's a tell-all book that gives a look inside life at the Playboy Mansion, which Holly calls a nightmare. Former Playboy playmate Holly Madison joins me right now. Holly, thank you so much for joining me. You've stayed really quiet about your private life at the mansion for such a long time. What was it that made you sit down and write this tell-all book?
Well, I wasn't interested in writing a tell-all for the sake of writing a tell-all. If I had been, I would have done it a long time ago when I left the mansion 7 years ago. But over the course of the years since I've been gone, I would run into fans from the show who would meet me after I just got done doing my Vegas show. We'd be doing a meet and greet, and they'd say, "Don't you miss the mansion?" or "I'm sorry, Hef didn't marry you." And there I was, single, independent, having an amazing life, making millions of dollars on my own, and I was just looking around like, can't you see I'm doing better now? And I thought, I wanted to share my journey because I thought it would be a positive message for women to know that, if you're in a relationship you're not happy in, you should leave, because I stayed in a relationship where I felt horrible about myself for a long time, and, maybe I should have got up and left, or maybe not. But, when I went out on my own, I learned who I was, and I was much happier, being single, even though I didn't know sometimes, where my next job was coming from. I learned a lot.
What I like what you just touched on is that you had a life after the Playboy Mansion. You did your own thing. I have to congratulate you. Amazon is saying that it's all 5 stars, mostly all 5 stars. Your book, you open up about the many rules that all the Hef's girlfriends had to follow. What were some of those strict rules which you did dislike the most?
Well, I think the most notorious rule was our 9 p.m. curfew, and that one actually didn't bother me. I wasn't looking to date other guys when I was there. I wasn't crazy about going out partying. I was fine, staying home and having dinner and watching a movie with Hef. But I think what affected me the most is that we were expected to give up outside jobs. Our job was supposed to be, being available to be with Hef for event. I think giving up my job, even though it was just a waitressing job that I had while I was in college, it was giving up my last shred of independence. And I think even if I had held on to something that small, things might have turned out differently for me.
You write about a bedroom routine of group sex, pink pajamas, Hef watching, the girls make out and porn, and then taking turns with the girls. You describe how none of you guys were actually turned on by any of the antics that were happening in the bedroom. Describe what it was like to have to even put on a show. And you knew I was going to ask you that question. You wrote it, so I had to ask you.
Yeah, no, I don't mind. I mean, over the years, people would always ask me, ew, how could you be with a guy that old? And for me, it wasn't even about that. What I liked about Hef was his charm and his personality. And the thing that made me uncomfortable about any sexual situation or, just what I was uncomfortable about with the dating situation in general was the extra girls. I felt like I made a really bizarre decision and that typically wouldn't have been me, and I wasn't happy, being amongst all the other women. So that was more what I was unhappy about.
It looked like there were good times with Kendra and Bridget, and then there was good times with Hef. How was it like that? How real was this show?
I always say reality TV is based on reality. You could never get, the time you needed for the money with the cameras without planning ahead of time what you're going to film. And they definitely wanted to catch us, growing a little bit as characters and doing different things. So the show was actually a great opportunity for us because I'd been living at the mansion for 4 years. And in order to catch us doing fun things, we were allowed to do more. We were allowed to travel. I was given a job at the Playboy studio because they thought it was interesting for TV. And actually having a job and being able to do things and grow as a person helped me gain my confidence a lot more.
But Holly, you knew you were going to write this book, and you know it wasn't going to go well with Hef, because he definitely had a reaction to your book. He says, over the course of my life, I've had more than my fair share of romantic relationships with wonderful women. Many moved on to live happy, healthy, and productive lives, and I'm pleased to say they remain dear friends today. Sadly, there are a few who have chosen to rewrite history in an attempt to stay in the spotlight. I guess, as those old saying goes, you can't win them all. What is your reaction to that and him saying that you're just trying to stay in the spotlight?
Well, I'm definitely not rewriting history. Everything in my book is 100% true. And I don't like being in the spotlight for Playboy things. And that's one of the lessons I learned, you know, over my journey. And it's one of the things I share in the book is when I was young, I was so hungry to be famous. And I think a lot of young people are today. And, you know, we've entered this culture of a lot of people being famous for nothing. And being famous for nothing doesn't really feel good. So I actually wrote the book because I had a message I wanted to share. You know, I wanted to tell people about my experience and hope that some people could learn from my mistakes and just tell them how, you know, I restarted my life and I'm happier now. And I think maybe a woman having something to say might be a little foreign to Hef. So that might be why he thinks I'm trying to stay in the spotlight.
Well, you have a lot to say in this book. I cannot wait to really sink my teeth into it, because I'm already seeing many things that I can't wait to find out about. Holly, thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
And congratulations on the book.